So you've been training for a while, you're a little further along on your journey, you haven't yet taken the stage, and you've had that all-important epiphany. It's dawned on you, you will never be a professional wrestler. I'm Mike Quackenbush, and this is Till We Make It. And today I want to talk about a tough decision that a lot of people have to make while they are training to be a professional wrestler. They come to the realization, for any number of reasons, that they are never going to be a pro wrestler. What might lead you to this conclusion? Well, the most common of these is that the physical rigor of being a professional wrestler is not well suited for you and your body. It might mean that you have no or a very low threshold for pain. It might mean that for days and days and days after every single training session, your body is so sore, so beat up, so ravaged by those rigors, you can barely get yourself out of bed or function. It is too demanding and too punishing for your body type, and you've decided that you're no longer going to continue pursuing pro wrestling as a career. Another entirely valid reason is that you realize that you are unable to accept all the sacrifices that becoming a professional wrestler entails. And don't feel weird about that. Each of us has something different going on in our personal lives. We have different obligations and responsibilities. We have certain relationships that we're willing to sacrifice and other ones we are not willing to sacrifice. And you may come up against a hard decision that makes you realize you are unable to continue pursuing being a pro wrestler. So whether it's one of those things or it's some other reason that is unique to you that leads you to the conclusion that you are not going to be a pro wrestler, however, you are rather devout in your love of the craft, where does that leave you exactly? Of course, the easiest answer to this is that you can return to the seats. You can go back into the bleachers. You can go back to enjoying professional wrestling solely as a fan. But for many, once they've been behind the curtain a little bit, that's no longer an acceptable option. And I often think about this thing which I learned a few years ago. There is a place for everyone in professional wrestling, but not every place for everyone. And here's what that means to me. There are enough jobs in professional wrestling that everyone could probably find something to do. There are plenty of openings to be filled. But not every one of those openings might be suited to you. There is no better example in my mind than a dear friend and trusted colleague of mine, Mr. Bryce Remsburg. In the very early days of the Wrestle Factory, Bryce completed our curriculum back then to be able to perform as a professional wrestler. But he chose instead to apply his talents and skills elsewhere. In fact, if you go back and watch the very first Chikara event ever, guess who that ring announcer is? That's Bryce Remsburg. And you know who ended up turning into maybe the best referee active in the world today? Bryce Remsburg. Could he also be a professional wrestler if he wanted to put his body through all those physical rigors day in and day out? You bet he could. That guy's bursting with talent. But he chooses to apply himself as a referee. And there are tons of on-camera roles in professional wrestling that aren't just for wrestlers, like managers and valets, like announcers and commentators, or any other supporting role that you can think of in the world of professional wrestling. Those are all on-camera roles that you might find to be very fulfilling, that will not force you to have to endure all the physical rigors of constantly getting thrown to the mat. And that's not all there is. There's also tons of off-camera roles too. Production team, tech team, behind the scenes. Who's working on promotion? Who's working on marketing? Who's handling all those social media channels? Who's designing the website? Who's making all the graphics that we need? Who designs the next poster that's going to be used to advertise the upcoming event? And so on and so on and so on. There's an unending list of off-camera jobs that still put you in the world of professional wrestling. Here is a real and somewhat sobering statistic about pro wrestling training as I know it here at my facility, the Wrestle Factory, now 2 decades old. Only about 10% of the people that actually come here to train as a professional wrestler ever end up in front of the paying customers when the lights are on. Only 10%. So what happens to that other 90%? Well, many of them just return to being fans and they go back to enjoying this thing that we all love after having a glimpse behind the curtain. But for others, they explore one of these tons of other on-camera or off-camera roles and find satisfactory and meaningful ways they can still contribute to the world of professional wrestling without ever taking a bump in the ring. Writing, performing, and structuring professional wrestling are three critical areas that need constant development and without which professional wrestling simply ceases to function. If a further exploration of those areas might be what you need next, then I would encourage you to check out my book. 7 Keys to Becoming a Better Performer, a book for fellow pro wrestlers, dives deep into writing and structure, as well as some performative elements, and it's available right now on Amazon.com. Or if you would rather that I just read the whole darn thing to you, okay. Go over to Audible.com. That's where the audiobook is, and I will lull you to sleep tonight.